Welcome back to the Faculty Factory podcast. I'm Kim Skorupski at Hopkins, and I'm joined today by Dr. Ashley Paul. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Kim. How's it going?
Good. I'm so happy to see you as usual. Dr. Paul is our frequent flyer now. This is her second time on the Faculty Factory podcast. You might want to take a peek at episode number 254, entitled Happiness in Academic Medicine Comes from Better Time Management. So Dr. Ashley Paul, MD, is an assistant professor of neurology in our School of Medicine here at Johns Hopkins. She treats patients with movement disorders. That's her specialty. She's also the clerkship director here at Hopkins. She's one of my favorite people, and it shows my bias because I feel like we have a lot in common in terms of being organized and systems and habits and process improvements.
We
And so
do.
she and I click on all kinds of tools. And she's such a, I don't want to say techie, but she knows all the latest cool stuff, tools and calendars and ways to manipulate, maneuver Outlook to see her productivity. So she is every time I talk with her, Ashley, you always have great new tips and new books and new ideas. And so I just always learn so much from you. So, of course, in a recent conversation with Dr. Paul, I said, oh, please come back in the podcast and talk about more of your time management stuff and how you manage emails. And so I think we're entitling this episode Chips and Chunks and Email Hygiene. Ashley Paul, thanks for being on the podcast with us today. And I can't wait to hear all the new stuff you've learned and sharing with us. Take it away.
Well, Kim, I think we need to give you credit for coming up with the name of the system of chips and chunks, because when we were describing it, when we were fleshing it out or talking about it, you were saying something about that, and then we started thinking about chocolate chip cookies, I think. But
Okay, probably.
but I want to give credit where it's due. And so I think last time we were talking about productivity, we were also talking about how it's important to not get caught up in this. I need 3 hours of time to work on something, and I
Right,
don't have 3 hours of time, and therefore I'm not going to work on it. I
right.
think so many people get caught up in that mindset, and it's to their detriment because, well, one, as many productivity books talk about, we actually do have more time than we think, even in academia. And two, it's so easy to get caught up in that mindset because we live in this world where we're constantly accessible via email, text messages. Our phones are constantly pinging for our attention. And so we feel busy all day long, and we don't create this time frame for ourselves to be truly deeply productive.
Mm,
And so I think in order for the chimps and chunks method to work, the first thing to say is to actually, maybe put your phone away when you're doing something that takes a lot of cognitive load and serious thinking, and it's going to be okay.
yeah,
Because our greatest taskmaster is our own anxieties, right? Like, what if I miss some urgent call? What if I miss, XYZ? And I will tell you that it's taken years for me to feel okay with not being glued to my phone or being too engaged with it. But I was totally validated actually this morning because I was listening to a podcast where Cal Newport, who's one of my favorite productivity authors, was being interviewed by Dr. Huberman, who's also very popular now,
mhm,
and also a neuroscientist, so a fellow after my heart. Um, and he was talking about how he also independently, I didn't actually get this idea from him. I haven't read his book on, he wrote a book about this too, I think, but he puts his phone away when he's doing his deep work. And he talks about how, we haven't had cell phones that long, really, right? And I at least grew up part of, I'm not like the current generation that grew up with cell phones in their hands as long as they could remember. My first cell phone was probably in college. And there are generations of people who had spent many years, most of their lives without a cell phone. And
right.
it was just a norm that you were not reachable until you got back to your office desk and you use a landline, right?
Yeah,
And it was okay, right? We all survived. And so even now, I think it's important to think about when you're setting yourself up to do deep work, as Cal Newport coins it, to try to minimize the distractions around you, have a ritual, maybe have a certain space where you do that, where the distractions can be minimized. When I first started doing anything akin to this, which was actually in medical school, when I was studying for step 2, I had to hide my phone from me. I just had to. Otherwise, I had major FOMO. I was looking at things on Facebook and what other people were up to. And at some point, I realized that this is just causing me emotional pain and not helping me study and accomplish what I needed to. And so I used to lock it up, give it to someone else, and told them, no matter how much I beg, don't give it back to me, those kind of things. And now I can actually have my phone at my desk. I have it set to, if I flip it upside down, it immediately goes on Do Not Disturb,
Oh,
the
good.
feature on the phone. And I take full advantage of that. So when I'm doing my deep work, I just flip it upside down and I pretend it's not there. And I'm able to do that at this point from a long time of training. And the other big thing that has really helped me was actually just taking social media off my phone. Because and Cal Newport mentioned this too in this podcast, so that made me feel so satisfied because he does the same thing. He explained it very nicely, though, that what makes your phone so interesting are things like social media that are designed to pull you, to grab your attention, and to be addictive.
Yes.
And I remember a time in my life where I would open my phone, open Facebook, and then it became open my phone, open Instagram. And now I don't have Facebook on my phone. I don't even remember my password to my Facebook account. I lost it. And I don't use Instagram. I have Twitter maybe, and once in a blue moon, if I'm at a conference, I'll post things for like professionally. Um, but otherwise I don't honestly use it very much. And it's been fine. I don't think it's been to my detriment at all. If anything, it's helped me focus on the things that are important to me without being interrupted, at its whim, right? So my phone doesn't have control over me anymore.
Hmm.
And that's been freeing, if anything. And once you realize that you're not missing anything, it becomes easier to do. Actually, I think it would be hard for me to go back to having social media bombarding me and having my text messages bombarding me and WhatsApp and all these things.
I've heard it referred to as digital dopamine. And when I heard that on a podcast, that this is a hit to the dopamine, and this digital dopamine is that exactly what you said, Ashley. These interfaces are designed to hold your attention, and then the feeds, the algorithms are always tailored to things you might like, what you're interested in. And before you know it, this is the whole science of addiction. You
Yeah.
realize, oh my gosh, I'm addicted. I'm
Yeah.
addicted. For me, it's the YouTube channels where I started watching little puppies. I clicked on one, oh, cute dog things. And now I get all these feeds of cute, funny animals. And I had
Mm-hmm.
to realize, oh my gosh, I have to limit myself to 10 minutes. I'd actually say, Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes, sit down, relax, scroll through that. And the 10 minutes flies by so quickly. And I'm realizing, wow, there you go. There went 10 minutes of my watching cute, but inane. And I'm not, saying that we shouldn't relax and decompress. It was important. But after you can see, or I can very easily see how we can lose ourselves and lose precious, valuable time.
Yeah.
Um, so disengaging too much. And so it's addiction. And
It
so
is.
like similar to what you did is I made during Lent, not only did I give up, caffeine and alcohol, but I'm like, I'm going to get off this YouTube thing.
Wow.
This is ridiculous.
Wow, you did 3 things. So that's
Oh, the
amazing.
caffeine, the caffeine almost killed me. I'll tell you that much. So that was the hardest
That sounds
part, was getting off
brutal.
the caffeine. Oh my gosh, no coffee after 2 weeks, I was finally human, but it was bad. But the YouTube also, I'm like, that's it. I don't know how to get YouTube off on my phone, but I just said, I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah.
And the same thing, then it was fine. I also like cut the cord to cable TV. And I'm like, well, how can I ever not have HGTV? I mean, I need these cable stations. No, I don't. So I
No?
think what is interesting about this is this realization of addictions we have. And I was chuckling because I'm born in 1965. And in the olden days for us, what would annoy us about people's distractions during meetings or conferences or whatnot were their pagers. The pagers would be going old time. There are these little boxes that
Oh
physicians
yeah, I
carry.
had a pager in residency, so
So you remember that
I
some people
remember
have
what pagers are. Yep.
some people don't know what pagers are, I'm sure, listening to this. But and then you'd come back to your office and that big bricky blocky thing on your desk called a phone, called a landline, sometimes had a red light flashing, which meant you had voicemail messages. And that's how you got your messages. You could choose to listen to them or not listen to them, just like your text messages or missed phone calls. But you're right in that I think that's so important when we think about time management and stress and
Mm-hmm.
productivity. It's an honest appraisal of our addictions. And
Yeah,
digital dopamine is a real thing. And
it is.
when we find ourselves obsessively checking our phones, I don't even know the statistics anymore, but I'm sure it's a couple hundred times a day.
Yeah, it's a lot of time lost.
And Ashley, how many times have you missed an important thing, an event? Have there been patient emergencies, family emergencies, personal crises that you have missed because your phone was on Do Not Disturb?
No, honestly,
No.
I can say no. I mean, even when, let's say, I think my cousin was having a crisis at some point, but there was nothing I would have been immediately able to do at that moment anyway. And calling her back maybe 2 hours later didn't actually change anything at all. I was still able to help her. She still felt fully supported by me, and nothing was amiss, she didn't say, "Why didn't you pick up 2 hours earlier?" you
Yeah,
know? And
that
so,
that's another interesting point that you're making, Dr. Ashley Paul. I'm saying your name over and over again so people know you. The other is that we tend to tell ourselves these stories that we must be available, as you said earlier, 24/7. That's another thing we've programmed ourselves, our friends, our culture, that, oh my gosh, I texted her, she's not texting me back immediately. What's going on? How rude. But it's when we train people how to treat us and that they know, oh, the reason why my sister last night, I mean, she texted me and I was we have a virtual caregivers, faculty members who care for older, their adults, their moms, their dads, and their partners. And so we meet once a month and it was last night was the night. And so she texted me and I said, on a call, talk to you later. Then later came and I was on the phone with my aunt. And so I rejected her call. And there would have been a time
mhm,
years ago where she would have been like, oh my gosh, you didn't reply to my text.
why
You
are
didn't
you
pick up my,
ignoring me?
why you ignored. And so then after I hung up with my aunt, I called her back and she picked up and she started talking. There was never a moment of what's going on. So
Yeah,
that mutual understanding of, uh, I'll get if we train people that I'm uber responsible 24/7 and I will hit you back immediately, that's
then that's what they
training
come to
people.
expect. And
They're
then
going to
that's when they're disappointed in you, right?
yes,
That's
and
when
then
they
you're
think
disappointed.
that you're ignoring
Oh,
them and how come you didn't.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Exactly. And Kim, honestly, I do the same thing with my patients. And so I have a letter, and I don't know if we talked about this last time, but at the start of a new visit, a new patient visit, I give them a welcome letter. And in it, it details how to best get in touch with me, how frequently I check my chart messages, what is my turnaround time. Do not use my chart for emergencies because that's not what it's intended for. I may not see your emergency in time. And here's what to do if you are having an emergency. And here are the numbers to call. And those numbers are not my numbers.
Setting expectations. That's good.
Yeah.
Expectations not for only for others and how to treat us and interact with us, but expectations for ourselves.
Yeah. That's
Because
where it starts.
that's yeah, in that zeal and that zest to be when you're starting off your career or in a new institution and you really want to be accessible and you want to show people, hey, I'm a team player, I'm in it, I'm gonna work hard. I'm a good investment. Watch me now. Look how valuable I am. Do you like me now? That, it sounds like the right thing to do. And yet it's setting up these false expectations of that's not human. That's not real life.
Right.
And then you
Yeah.
can't sustain that.
No. And that's
It's
where burnout
human.
happens.
Yeah.
Exactly. I had a patient who wanted my cell phone number, well, it was the patient has Parkinson's with dementia. So was the spouse, and saying, I wouldn't use it frequently and all these things. And as well-intentioned as anyone could be, when you're in this vulnerable state and you're at a loss and what to do, I know I'm going to get a lot of phone calls and it's not appropriate. And I cannot be that available to anyone at any, it just doesn't, it's not realistic and it's not
Yeah.
sustainable. And so I had a very firm but polite conversation with why that's just not going to happen, right? How I need to take care of many complicated patients. And I wish I could give that level of service to everyone. But in order to give a decent level of service to everyone, I cannot give my cell phone number. And here's that form, here's my welcome letter and my communication expectations so that we're on the same page.
Good for
And,
you.
they still follow up with me. He told me that I am because now there's multiple positions involved, multiple teams involved, and he still thinks me as the leader of that team.
So there you
One
go.
time
He
he
didn't
said,
leave your practice. You didn't
not
get
at
in
all. In fact, he
trouble.
said he thinks I walk on water, and he told me to not actually try because he still needs me. So, so it's not, where I think we're afraid sometimes that we don't want to disappoint other people. We don't want to set these expectations and make it sound like we had these extremely firm boundaries that hurt people. But boundaries are actually a healthy thing, and they don't have to be super rigid. There are moments where you have to be flexible, but I think having some type of boundary in place is actually respectable. I've had patients thank me for this letter that I have them sign, by the way, so they acknowledge. So it's just an acknowledgement that they read through it, just in case. I never had to really do anything with that, though. It works so well that I think people actually like having the expectations. Most people don't actually know what my chart is for and how to use it and all these things.
Right.
So a lot of patients thank me for it.
And you're making me feel like, oh my gosh, I bet you some of us could do and would find incredibly valuable if we had expectations and signed a letter to ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, that's a
Dear
great
Kim
idea.
Skurowski, these are my expectations for how you are going to handle yourself and how you will comport yourself and how you will take care of yourself and
Yeah.
how you will set boundaries. And please, read the above every day and sign it below, just like a daily affirmation, reminding yourself of this is our standard operating procedure, how we do business with ourselves.
It's funny that you say that because I actually did do that when I was studying for step 2. It wasn't quite a letter format. It was the golden rule. So all the things that I needed to keep myself in check so that, step studying, people have lost relationships during those moments, right? It's infamously a time of hardship and brutal studying. And I had this letter that I kept pasted on the wall in front of me, reminding myself how to burn my ships so I didn't run away from studying.
Burn your ships. Tell me more about that.
Oh, it's an expression. It refers to a time, I think, it's like a
It sounds
Spanish
like I'm saying because
conquistador.
it sounds like Viking, and I'm my sister and I learned that we are part Viking. So anything that sounds Viking, we're like, yes, we are Viking. We used
No,
to burn
it's
ships
actually,
as
I
well.
think, refers to Spanish conquistadors.
Okay, all
But
right.
basically, when they landed in the Americas, um,
Mhm.
what was the explorer's name? My history is terrible. But anyway, the idea is that he burned the ships so that the crew could not leave. And then
Oh,
they had to really
hardcore.
commit to
Oh, I see. Yes, yes, yes.
being in the Americas, exploring, going forward, right? So you had no escape route.
Was that good old Chris Columbus or Amerigo Vespucci or
Oh, I have to look back. I can't remember. I don't think it was Christopher Columbus, but someone in history. Anyway, that's where the expression comes from, at least. That's like supposed to be the origin of the expression.
I'm trying to think of some like sarcastic, smart like celebrity who came here from another country, but I can't even think of a celebrity to make a
But
joke
I
there.
wanted to go back to how you were talking about the dopamine addiction of
Yeah.
using your cell phone, of the pings.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, a good segue to chips and chunks
Okay.
because we're going to use the same system, right, to give you that dopamine addiction, but it's productive.
Okay. Go. Lay it on us.
So when I am in my deep work mode, which I start off by thinking about also what are my best hours of the day to even think productively, right? Like and I think that's going to be different for everyone. Some people are more morning, some people are more late evening. I actually always thought of myself as a morning person. And one morning I had a very unproductive morning, and my husband, half asleep, told me that you're a nobody person. And he meant it kindly, actually, because what he was trying to say was that you're not held to the morning. Just because the morning wasn't productive doesn't mean the whole day has to be unproductive. And
Hmm.
don't label yourself as this one type of person, right? And
Ah,
that was eye-opening because then I actually really started looking at my day. And I actually found that some of my best work comes in the afternoon for whatever reason. And so now my mornings I do more of my early mornings I'll do sort of more creative, let me just think about the world kind of thing. And that's when I actually read books like Slow Productivity by Cal Newport, or all these productivity books, because people ask me like, where do you find the time to read those books? So that's where I do that. And then I will do my emails and what Cal Newport refers to as shallow work, things that are important, but and have to get done, but don't move the field forward, doesn't move your career forward, right? So I'll do the shallow work first. And I think that gives me some relief. Like, oh, I answered emails, I took care of some things.
right.
But I put a time limit on that. And then I do my chips and chunks. And I do multiple projects for better or for worse. Yeah. And this is actually a question I want to ask you about. But before I get there, I'll explain the chips and chunk system. So I do something we talked about this last time too, focus mate sessions,
Hmm.
which is basically like WAG, right? You start off a session with a partner anywhere in the world. You know, you can sign up for a time slot, and you both say what are you going to be working on in this next time frame, and then you independently work. And at the very end, you talk about what you did, right? So the accountability is there, and you can choose 25-minute, 50-minute, or 75-minute sessions. And the way that you schedule them, you have to have breaks in between. So if I did back to back 25-minute sessions, there will be a 5-minute break in between. If I did back to back 50-minute sessions, there will be a 10-minute break. And 75-minute sessions have at least a 15-minute break.
Got it.
So it's good because it also has the built-in Pomodoro method, if you're familiar with that.
The timer, the tomato timer.
Yes. So I decided that if I'm doing a longer session, which I'll sometimes do in the afternoons, 50-minute or 75-minute sessions, I could break that down into chips. And depending on what I had to do. So all of my projects have bookmarks. So this is the next thing to do in that particular project. So I don't have to spend time, oh, what did I last do? Where am I in this? I haven't looked at it in so long. I don't know what I'm doing. I try to actually leave a trail for myself. So I have one place where I keep these things. Right now I'm doing it on a whiteboard as a Gantt chart. Sometimes if it's really, really specific tasks, I'll just put in the document itself if I'm
Hmm.
writing like a manuscript, right? So
Hmm.
at the top of the document, I have almost like a list that I cross out and work through. And so it's very easy to then pick up the work, right?
Right.
And sometimes to move one project forward, I just need to send out an email, right? It's not a
A big deal.
huge chunk of time that I need. And so that'll be my chip. Or maybe I just want to get some progress, something moving forward. Like maybe I just want to write a paragraph. So that could be a chip. And other times I really want to wrestle with the material. And maybe I'm in a project where that I'm at that stage where it's not all put together yet. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to even execute this. And I need time to just really think about it. And that's when I'll want to maybe dedicate a chunk of time, right? So
Right.
that'll be like a 50-minute, anything more than 25 minutes, like I'll consider it a chunk.
25.
And
Okay, hang on a second. Anything more than 25 minutes, you consider a chunk. Got it.
yeah, and I just did it that way because it's easier with Focus Made. It's easier
Focus
with the
mate. Yeah.
Pomodoro technique since the smallest unit of time on that is 25 minutes, right? So
Let me pause you here because now I'm going to laugh because yesterday, this is where, again, honesty and knowing yourself, knowing your bugaboos, knowing when you get into a system or a habit or a pattern of doing things, whatever that thing is, you get better at understanding the bookends around how long that thing will take. If you have
yes.
to, fix your references or, fill out a form or upload a manual, you got to get a sense of how much time you need. And here's sometimes where we can delude ourselves. And there's an example. Last night, I got an article rejected and I thought, all right, now I had it, my hit list of the next journal we're going to go to. And I thought, oh gosh, before I told you that last night, the session we have in the evenings, I thought, okay, I've got 20 minutes. I can fix this and resubmit it and upload it to the new journal. So I quickly went to the new journal's instruction for authors, read through it. I think this is pretty good. Yeah, the reference is the same style. I do have to add some line numbering. Da, 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 da. Now I'm looking at the clock. I've got 20 minutes before my next session starts. And then I realize I'm almost done, as I think, almost done reformatting that paper. And then I realize, oh, they have like a whole page of specific acknowledgement sections, the IRB, the
Mm-hmm.
authorship, who did what, the declarations, all these statements that had to be put up. And I was so mad at myself
Yeah.
because then I ran out of time. So my
Yep.
chip was not a chip, it was actually a chunk, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
So that to me was you're helping me, think about allotting sufficient time. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you don't, I had to kind of like calm myself and go, Kim, this is not like you're acting as if this paper is bleeding out. And if you don't get it submitted in the next 3 minutes,
Right.
it's going to disappear. Are you kidding
It's
me?
not do or die. Right.
I mean, are you kidding me? I'm laughing to myself last night thinking, where do I have this sense of urgency and this anger that I'm holding about I thought something was going to be quick and it's not. But guess what? Okay, so what? At least I got 20 minutes of it done. So
Yeah.
now the reminder is, Control S, save it. It's right here on my desktop. I just probably need another 10 minutes. So I had to reframe
Well,
the disappointment, like I didn't
mhm.
do it, to I made progress and now it needs only a little bit of a tweak. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
mindset changing.
And I think all humans are bad at estimating how long something will take. The more you
Mhm.
actually track it and pay attention to it, the better you get at it.
Yeah,
You have to consciously pay attention to it, though. Oh, wow, this actually took me this much time, right? And
right,
then you get a better sense for next time how much time you should allot.
right.
But until then, I think we talked about this last time. There was something I was listening to called Being Superhuman, where, and it kind of reminds me of the chip and chunking method that we came up with. But when you take a big task, right? Like even resubmitting a paper sounds like, oh, that's one item line, but it actually isn't, right? Because you have to make sure your references match. You have to make sure the new journal doesn't have new requirements, right? Maybe you have to write a new cover letter,
Oh my gosh, the
whatever.
letter, right? So upload your letter. I'm like, I didn't have letter last time. And I felt like saying,
Right,
really,
right.
I gotta write a letter.
So
Here's a paper, publish it.
what I would do with something like that is I would look at, okay, what are actually all the things involved in getting this submitted? And
Hmm,
then all those little things would become my chips.
there you go.
And then you could break it down even further. And I do this kind of in the moment when I'm in a focus mate session. At the start of the session, I pick my chips, and I focus mate has a chat feature. And so I tell my partner I'm going to drop it in the chat, and I'll pick some chips, and I'll actually put a time next to each chip. So I'll say, okay, writing the cover letter, maybe that'll take me 10 minutes. And then maybe making sure my references match the new journal, that might take me a few minutes, right? And so I will actually put timestamps on it. And so if I'm doing a 50-minute session and I'm trying to do a bunch of chips in one session, I will have those timestamps, and that helps me keep pacing of my time. And I have a little timer.
Hi, Bert. He's so cute.
Yeah, it's a cute timer. I guess no one can see this, but it has a face on it, and it's
It's
very
like an old
colorful.
fashioned like kitchen timer, but he's very happy. He's a smiley face with lots of it's color and it's
Yeah.
cheerful and it looks like you just rotate it and then it probably dings. Like,
Yep. Yeah,
yeah,
it's just like a regular timer.
yeah,
There it is.
super cool.
So I will use that to mark my chips to make
Yeah,
sure I stay on task, and also just to keep me aware, oh, well, that chip actually took longer than I expected. Because it's easy to lose track of time, right? Even
right,
within a 50-minute period, you can lose
right.
track of how long you're taking to do something. And
I'm going to interrupt here because I like this. What you're pointing me to is the mindfulness, as you use the term pacing, the mindfulness of how much time I thought it would take me to do this, and then being aware of where we get pulled into little rabbit holes. And the rabbit
Mhm.
holes are, here's an example of last night where, oh gosh, what was it? What was it? Come on, brain. Um, oh, I had to put in the estimated number of contact hours for something, something. And the prior version of the paper did not have that number. And then also there's like an IRB situation, like the prior submission didn't ask for what the IRB number was. And so I had two things that I call rabbit holes that this is not a quick thing, but it took me a moment to go, wait a minute. I'll go to my my Outlook email in the file folder for this paper. I remember I'll just search for IRB because then that'll show me the number. Then I have to go to that poster presentation where we actually did quantify contact hours for this activity. And I remember putting it in the poster. So I had to open up the poster, get that number. So these little like sidebar trails that kind of pull you off course. And now I'm not looking at the paper, but I'm actually in an email and I'm going digging deep. And then while you're in that email searching for or looking at the PowerPoint poster searching for, we can very easily get pulled into, wait a minute, I'm in email. Who just sent me an email? Ashley Palmer said, I can do that real quickly. And now it's before you know it, you're in puppy YouTubeville and you're like, wait a minute, what was I working on?
How did I get here?
Gosh. In the meantime, I'm looking at, email from Ashley while I was trying to find that citation for the IRB. Well, I'm trying to work on that paper. Oh, by the way, the podcast I just recorded is downloaded, so I got to upload that to the website. And oh, by the way, my session starts in 2 minutes, and that kind of
and you feel like a big circus act, right?
Right.
And I think what the way to get away from that, well, one, I actually try to download things off my email. So if I had review done by my co-authors and they gave me comments, I'll open my email, I'll download it and then close my email. And of course, I'm human, so I can also get pulled away. And sometimes I find myself answering another email, but then my timer goes off and I was like, oh, hello. I got sidetracked and let me get back on track now. And that's really helpful.
So that's a good, so it sounds kind of hokey, maybe if you're thinking, I don't need a timer. I know how to tell time. Maybe not. And that is the mindfulness that we overestimate our capacity to do things. We underestimate our ability to get things accomplished in small. We do a lot of mind games with ourselves. So that timer is just a tool to hold you accountable, to hold us, to remind us, like you said, the timer goes off and we're like, whoa. Then that's a moment to reflect. How did that happen? Interesting. Brain just learned something. And now the next time when you're on focus mode, the next time you're putting parameters about how long will this chip take me? And is this a chunk? Is this a chip? You're going to remember, whoopsie, maybe if I have to go somewhere to search for something, I'm going to put that later on because I might get distracted. So I'm going to do the things where I can be linearly, singularly focused on the paper. And if anything requires my having to go somewhere else, maybe I'm not going to do that. Maybe because that's where I lose attention. So that awareness of what we're doing and how we're doing it is so important.
Yes. And the more you become aware, I feel like the more you forgive yourself, right? Because it's not like I have some personal character trait flaw. It's just human nature, right? And just having awareness of that, I think helps you to pivot and think about, okay, well, maybe I need more time. And so being superhuman, they actually recommend when I'm calling them chips. They don't call it chips, but we're going to call it chips. When you're making your chips and you estimate how long something's going to take, double that time. Until you really know how long that's going to take you, it's good to double it. And I make it almost like a little competition with myself. So I doubled it, but what if I could do it in less than that time? And sometimes if I have like a piece of paper and if I'm doing this on paper, I'll put a smiley face every time I do it in less than the time that was estimated for it. And that feels really good. And that gives you that dopamine hit, right? You finish this tiny chip for a bigger project. And now you can get that instant gratification. Hey, I crossed that off. And hey, I did it actually faster than what I thought I was going to do because I overestimated the time it would take to begin with rather than underestimating. And then it builds, right? Every time you get that dopamine, you feel good. And that actually puts you more into that productive state and away
under promise, over deliver. You under promise, over deliver. Is that how they say, like in construction world, that you you always
want to undersell,
that you
have to do that to yourself, right? Like you have to undersell to yourself. You have to say, well, you know what? I think this is going to take me 30 minutes. Well, maybe it'll actually take me an hour. And I know from my personal experience, when you said that you're going to do a resubmission 20 minutes, I mean, I probably would need at least 2 hours, an hour to 2 hours,
Yeah.
depending on the journal, of course. But like, it can take, yeah. And so, and it partly I am aware of that because I've been doing this method of tracking how long actually things take and getting that sense of, oh, I thought that could only take 10 minutes, but really it takes
Mhm.
20. It actually does take double.
And there's nothing better. I almost said more betterer. There's nothing because I'm always silly and I play with language, and then sometimes in real life I shouldn't be playing with language. It's there's nothing more betterer than when you find yourself having extra time, because
Yeah.
that extra time is like, ooh, winner, chicken dinner. Now I can do a couple more chips. Now I
Hmm.
can go read another chapter of Cal Newport. Now I can go for, a walk. And if
Yeah.
you're I could do something fun. I could do some burpees. If you love burpees, I could do something. So that 10, nobody's ever going to go, oh, darn, the meeting ended early and now we have 15 extra minutes. What am I going to do with that?
Right,
So
right,
you're not
exactly.
going to, you can't lose by doubling or overestimating the amount of time. And it's minimally, you're getting, your brain is learning. It's like it's
Yeah.
learning for the next time, and it's improving efficiencies for next time, and it's that sense of accomplishment, and that,
Yeah.
like you said, that sense of like, yes, I'm doing this. The chip will ultimately inevitably work if you chip away rather than waiting every 7 weeks or when you're done with rotation, that you can now finally do the thing in one big chunk. You can't do that thing in one big chunk. It's too
No,
You can't
no.
focus for 8 hours. Well, you can't focus well. I'm
Yeah. And I think that's why I like the whole chip chunk method because when you're looking for a huge chunk of time, time expands, right? It is
Mhm.
just a construct at the end of the day. It's how we perceive it. When I'm planking for a minute in the gym, it feels forever, right?
Yeah,
And when I'm trying to get something done that's meaningful to me, like writing my manuscript or something like that, it just time, there's not enough of it. And so it's important to keep that viewpoint, I think, because it allows you to be a little bit more forgiving towards yourself, for one
mhm,
thing. And I think that's
mhm.
very important. We waste a lot of time being mad at ourselves, right? That
Right.
takes time. It takes time and energy to be
Yeah.
mad at yourself. And so I've learned to also say, okay, so that didn't work, and that's okay. I'm learning from this because at the end of the day, when we look at my life overall, when I'm on my deathbed one day, maybe, right? Or whatever, when I'm retiring, let's say, maybe we don't need to make it that grim. Um, no one's gonna care if there was this one day that things didn't work the way I wanted it to,
Yeah.
and I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do. But in the grand scheme of my life and my career, I did, right? And no one's gonna worry about that. I mean, in Cal Newport's Slow Productivity book, he actually talks a lot about many famous people who minimize the distractions, minimize all those pings and pulls to work on their passion projects. And and that's what really led to their success. And we live in this world now where you have to be productive. You have to publish something every day. And one, you have to worry about quality then, right? If we're just pushing things out so fast. And two, it's just we're not designed to work that way as humans, right? Like it's important to actually take your time and think through something. And sometimes you have to schedule that. Like you have to make time to think about things. And those during those times you want to have your emails away, your phone away, and you want to think about things in seasons, right? Not just today and tomorrow and this week. I actually started thinking about things over months. But I know Cal Newport says he thinks about things over years. He's like,
Mhm.
this decade of my life, what do I want to accomplish?
Right.
And I think that's a good thing to think about, right? Stand and take the
Big
huge
picture.
view, the big picture view.
Yeah.
What do I really want to accomplish in the long run? Because that influences what's important to me right now, right? What
Yeah.
is the thing I'm going to do now to help me get to that 10-year goal or that 5-year goal? And that kind of helps you to prioritize too, right? To think about what are the big priorities. And
Yeah.
I think I am full disclaimer, I'm not a parent.
I
So
was I was just thinking about all the faculty members we know who have kids and
Yeah.
all the faculty members I coach, and they're, lamenting and grieving the fact that I'm not as productive as I should be. I look at so many people, social comparison is, the definite, the
Oh,
bane of
yes.
our existence. If you want
Harder to
to.
do if you get rid of Facebook and social media, by the way. So another plus.
Exactly. And then reminding them, well, your kids are how old right now? Well, they're 4, 6, and 8. And so what's important to you now? Are these papers and grants, the most important thing, or the 4, 6, and 8-year-old people living in your house are? And so we know the answer to that. So there's that recognition. When you said seasons, Ashley, that made me, reminded me the seasons of life. There's certain periods and seasons of our life where the other things will take priority, will take precedent. And
Yeah.
that learning to, the earlier word you said, pace ourselves, that some people will speed along on a highway. You're on the side ancillary road. You're going a little bit more slowly. And maybe you might jump back on the highway later. But for now, you're horse and buggy on the side road and you're kind of slowed your pace down a bit. But it's a marathon that never ends. You can join,
Exactly.
you have your own pace, you're doing your own thing, as long as you are, I don't know, as long as you're, just going to say happy, but that's not even happy. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're
No,
healthy,
why not?
you're
You're
moving,
content. You
you're content,
feel
you're in the moment, you're
you feel
doing your
aligned with
best.
your values.
Values alignment there. That's a good one.
Yeah,
You're aligned with your
your
values.
inner values and what you're doing outwardly match, right? I think parents struggle because they do want to spend time with their kids and they do want to be involved in their lives and they want to be the greatest scientists ever and, publish and all these things. But there are seasons to it. And I'm telling you partly this to myself because when I do have kids at some point, I want to make sure I remember this for myself, that these don't things have to be necessarily fully compete with each other, and that it's okay to maybe slow down in one aspect of your life or another, knowing that it's going to shift again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I love this concept of what Cal Newport calls slow productivity. And he talks about how Isaac Newton took actually 15 years from the time that apple fell off the tree before he actually published anything about gravity and, all of his work. 15 years, right? So and I think a lot of people who are very accomplished, they do actually do things in the span of decades, and they'll do smaller works, but they build up, right? And so the pinnacle of their research or whatever didn't come out in a month, right? And so we have to remember that we're building and working towards something, and that's why having the longer term view, like what's your 5-year view of what you want to accomplish, what do you want to put your mind towards is important because then everything else before can build up towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Talk to us about email hygiene. The other thing we were talking about the last time we got together, and you pulled up that tool that actually looked at how many emails you read, got, sent. Like what are your email
Yes.
hygiene tips?
Well, I realized I was getting sucked away by email again. And I do try to put these boundaries for myself. I time block. So I set amount of time in my calendar. Well, this is when I'm going to check emails and I'm going to put it away. But I was getting caught up in it. And so I thought, let me look at the numbers, right? And I saw that um let's see, it was something like in 4 weeks, I at least opened, if not read, nearly 3,000 emails. And I might have said somewhere between like around 400 emails I think I had sent out. And I thought, gosh, that sounds like a lot. I don't actually know what is a lot. I don't know what's a normal metric. And even if other people are opening a similar amount of emails, is that okay? Right? Because, and this is a good, I know I keep referring back to Cal Newport's Slow Productivity book, just from a recency bias, because that's what I've been reading lately. But he talks about the concept of pseudo productivity and how in a factory, you know how many cars the factory makes or how many products, right? There's a very clear measurement. But
Mhm.
in knowledge work, that's a lot harder to measure. And how do you know if someone's being productive in the day to day? Well, we don't, right? And so we end up with a pseudo productivity by constantly replying and being on emails and just being sort of visibly busy. And busyness is not always actually real productivity.
Mhm.
And so Of course, there are emails that are very important. You know, as a neurology clerkship director, for example, there are things that are going to happen in real time that I need to respond to. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing those emails. But there's also a lot of emails that I don't really need to look at least not all the time or not right away. And so I know GTD, right? Getting things done. They talk a lot about, okay, you look at an email, it takes 2 minutes, do it now. If it's going to take more than 2 minutes, sort of triage it, right? You put in another folder. But, you know, when Alan wrote that book, I feel like I don't know if they got nearly as many emails as we do now. And the work hours have become nebulous, right? There aren't any work hours anymore. There's no longer a 9 to 5 concept at all.
Mm-mm.
And so I felt like I need something more than that. For me to triage every email was time consuming. And I found that on Outlook, it can do it for you. You can make rules on Outlook. And it's really nice. Sometimes the rules didn't work perfectly, and I had to go back and tweak them because I was then missing emails. But once I figured it out, you can set certain emails, like so all the emails that come from my clerkship coordinator, which is very important for me, I put it in one folder, and it automatically gets routed there. So Outlook will do that for me. And so now whenever I open my Outlook, I'll open that folder first because that's where all those emails live now, right? Before I look at anything else. So I have a folder that automatically routes all the emails that come from my MOC, my medical office coordinator, right? So it's all patient care related, mostly forms, I think, for me to sign and things like that. But that goes to another folder, right? And so,
And I can understand like the way right away you've given us two examples of automatically routing important emails to different folders, that makes it so much more efficient if in your daily calendar you say, check and reply to mock emails from 1 to 1:20 p.m. Now that makes so much more sense. And when you find that you've got even 10 minutes to chip that out, you're not having to sift through and then have the panic, the anxiety of 600 emails to find the mock, to search for emails from Kim, or now they're just very specifically in that one file folder. You can get in there quickly, get out quickly without being distracted by the pool of the seeing, even if you decide not to do other emails, your eye is going to see emails from your boss or from your best friend or from a patient or something, and your brain is all of a sudden going to light up. And even if you choose not to address it, now you've got the wheels spinning of, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, I better look at that. And then you're pulled. Exactly. So that is a great technique for email hygiene to improve efficiencies and alleviate some of that.
And I'll take it one step further because I realized that I started getting a lot of subfolders. And that itself, when you have too many subfolders, it also then becomes meaningless, right?
Right.
And so I ended up trying to rank my folders. So the folder that's named after my clerkship coordinator has the letter A next to it. So it shows up first because your folders are going to be alphabetized. That's just what Outlook does. And so now I have an A, B, C, etc. So they're ranked, and that way I just go to the top and I don't need to spend as much time on the bottom. And most of the stuff on the bottom are just archival things. So, for example, I'm doing my master's in medical education, and because of that, I'm automatically on the School of Education's emails. And most of those emails, like 99% of them, are not relevant to me. They're things about how the building is closed. Well, my entire master's is online, so I don't actually need to know that, right? I've never stepped foot in that building. And so those automatically go to some folder. So they exist. If I really want to look at it, I can go find that folder, but I don't need to.
Yeah.
And after doing this, I reduced the amount of emails that I read by at least 600 in a month. And
wow. And I right click on them. Let me go to Outlook right now. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but so if I right click on an email, I'm in my inbox right now. If I click on a new email and I right click on it, slide down to the bottom where it says junk. And then junk will open up a block sender. Never block sender's domain, never block this group or mailing list. So you can make a decision rule right there. And the stuff that I have determined is junk, I'd say probably every other day I'm blocking a sender. And that cuts down on just kind of the nonsense emails that somehow accidentally, even though we've got a firewall at Hopkins, we get some of these, strange
Oh yeah, somehow they find their way through.
Yeah, so I'm always blocking, and I was very happy when I learned that right click feature that I don't want to even look at nonsense.
So if you right click an email and you see under block, it says rules,
Uh-huh.
and then you click create rules.
Yeah.
Now
Manage rules
you
and
can make a
alerts.
new rule, right?
Yeah.
So always move messages from the sender to whatever folder or create a new folder. So that's one way to create a rule. If
Uh-huh.
you right click an email and then go to rules again and click manage rules, you'll see all the rules that have been created.
Yep.
Outlook tries to maybe create some of them automatically for you.
Look at
Um,
that. Email
but
rules.
they're
Alert.
not Outlook doesn't always know what you specifically want, right? So you can create new rules here. You can make them if this and this, then do this kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Outlook is pretty amazing actually, with some of its rules. It's just not,
Intuitive.
yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you have to dig in and learn it, but once you do, it really can
It's like so many.
streamline.
All I remember back in the day before computers, when Microsoft first came out, it's like anything when you first learned Excel or PowerPoint or Access. There's so many buttons and options, and probably like our brain. It's one of those annoying statistics, like we only use 10% of our brain. I probably only use 10% of PowerPoint's options and features, or 5% of Excel's features. And then when you like are at the shoulder, looking over the shoulder at somebody, and I was doing something and I used the keyboard, I control F to find, or control S, or control F7. I did some kind of like shortcut. And my friend said, "What did you just do?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what I just do? I did da da da." She's like, "No, but how did you do it?" I'm like, "I don't know. What?" And I had to actually stop, and my fingers automatically did a search by using the keys, so the keyboard. So the point is, that I'm trying to make is that there's so many features that we don't even explore because you think, I don't have time. I don't want to learn about,
Yeah,
I don't want to learn about this Zoom feature. Yesterday, Tracy Norman, our fabulous coordinator in the office, I said, "I wish we could share this slide in the breakout room of Zoom." She's like, "Well, you can." And I'm like, "No, you can't." She's like, "Yes, you can. It's a new feature. Stop share, go to share, at the very bottom, share to breakout room. Voila." So it was done.
yeah,
So it's that we oftentimes think, I don't have time to learn how
yep,
to use EndNote or RefWorks. I'm just going to muscle through the old fashioned way. And yet it's ridiculous, because if you look, okay, Kim, don't be so silly. You take the time to learn this, it's going to save you on the back end. So if you
yes,
take a minute to learn all these Outlook features, go to YouTube. Don't look at Noodles the Pooch, who I love, Noodles the Pooch, but look at a YouTube video on how to, tips for using Outlook. That 5 minutes might end up saving you. It's not going to be might. It will save you a lot of time on the end. So
exactly.
that's
Yeah, it took a little time to set up these rules, but it didn't take a ton of time. And I did some of them as I went, right? So, okay, I'm actually getting a lot of emails from here. So, where do I want to put those? And so maybe for a week, I spent 10 minutes a day trying to clean this up, and then it was up and running. And I
yeah.
haven't looked at it since. And I think I realized that I probably will have to look at it maybe once or twice a year, because as my life changes and my responsibilities changes, I might need newer folders or things to change. And
And like,
that's fine.
and like you said, you also will learn, just like anything we learn, where you have a whoopsie and go, "Wait a minute, that's not quite right." And you go back in and you just kind of like mess around with it and tweak it. So there's always
Oh
opportunity
yeah.
to hold something back that's not working for me and fix it. That's the beauty of, our brains learning to, again, put
Yeah.
better
For
confidence in it.
example, I am the faculty advisor for the SIGN group, which is the student interest group in neurology. And I thought, okay, let me route all these emails to a SIGN folder. And I didn't think about how the word sign is also just an English word. And
Oh,
so I had it scanned for any email that has the word sign goes into this folder. And oh
whoopsie.
my goodness, that was a whoops. Like, and so I fixed the rule and it's fine now. But yeah, so it took a little tweaking.
Easy peasy. Dr. Ashley Paul, see, folks, this is why I love her. Doesn't she just have so much wisdom, so much great application? Oh, and let's talk about outcomes before we peace out here. Gosh, do these things, these techniques, these habits you have adopted, do they work? Are you productive at all? Is anything resulting? We're talking about dawn obedience, structure, process, and outcomes. You have a great structure, you got a great process, but do they result in outcomes for Dr. Ashley Paul?
I believe they do. I feel productive, and not productive, I'm just busy and harried all the time, but actually working on things that I love to work on. And there's a certain joy in that every day in my work. And to me, that is the most important thing. If I wake up and I watch the sunrise, and then I go for a walk, and then I do my work, and I feel good about that every day. So to me, that is the most, to me, that's the biggest sign I could say of my productivity. But I guess more concretely, I could also say, and I think we talked about this last time, I was named one of the top 100 doctors in Baltimore. And that was a very pleasant surprise, especially since I'm about to complete 2 years as faculty. So I'm still very early in my career. I built programs. I run the Osler House Staff Preceptor Program, which is a program for any neurology fellows that are interested in medical education to get hands-on opportunity on how education leadership is structured, what is it like to have, or a peek at least at what academic medicine with an education focus looks like. I built a new course that's taught in the TTW, the teaching, no, what's it called? Transition to the wards. All the second year medical students have to take this course from when they transition from preclinical to clinical. And, there's a lot of practical content, and it's like they learn how to do procedures and all these things. And as a part of that course, I developed one workshop on growth mindset and how to have a growth mindset and increase your feedback literacy. So how to apply a growth mindset to receiving feedback. I also wrote, a couple of chapters that are being published. I did 2 publications my first year, and I had another one this past year and another one in the works. So it's an ongoing process. I am doing my master's. So I'm doing research around that. I'm working on my capstone right now. And so that's something that is going to be eventually published within the next year or so. And of course, a master's is also very time consuming, as you can imagine.
You're being humble. I could tell this is really hard for you folks. You don't know this, but she's looking kind of out the window. She's shy to talk about this. But my point in asking you that, actually didn't want to embarrass you, was that these things work, that you're not just spinning and having this sense of the false productivity, that the sense of look how organized I'm spending so much time organizing myself. To what end? There's an end to this. And the end is you are productive. You are generating a lot of work and quality work and content. So that to me is the evidence that what you're doing works.
And I still have time outside of work. So I am part of a book club with my friends who I went to college and med school with, and we meet once a month and we read some fiction for fun. And I read all these productivity books. I went to what was it called? I have it around here somewhere. Anyway, I went to a class at the American Visionary Art Museum and made this glass ceramic piece just for fun, for no other reason. So it's given me a sense of a full life. It's full. It's definitely, there's never a dull moment, but I like it that way. And I can genuinely say that I feel pretty happy in my career and life right now.
I want to end on that. Dr. Ashley Paul, you are wonderful. I really admire you. I thank you so much for being on the Faculty Factory podcast. You can get a hold of Dr. Ashley Paul via email at apaul19, APAUL19 @jhmi.edu. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, it's your podcast producer Casey Callahan with your monthly Faculty Factory podcast update. Please make sure to download our free newest Faculty Factory book called The Academic Medicine Starter Kit, Timeless Tips and Guidance for Early Career Faculty Members. It is free and right now available to download on the facultyfactory.org website. Visit facultyfactory.org to find it, and you can see a link there to the Amazon version as well if you want the print version. In addition, I wanted to let you know that as of August 2024, this podcast you're listening to has more than 88,000 total downloads and more than 13,000 total YouTube views. The Faculty Factory website has drawn more than 48,000 web visitors from users in 122 different countries. We want you to be a guest on our show, so please reach out via the Faculty Factory website and send us a message there.
Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. The mission of the Faculty Factory is to build and support a community of leaders in faculty development who share tools, resources, wisdom, and encouragement in service to our faculty members, schools, and institutions. We encourage you to go to facultyfactory.org to find out more. Get in touch with me, ask me any questions. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Faculty Factory Podcast. We'll see you next time. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine Office of Faculty. For more information, visit facultyfactory.org.